Howdy y'all, Lance from Permanent Records here. I'm going to do a different kind of video than I've done in the past. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, but I'm going to tell you about a road trip, a record buying road trip that I went on recently. I didn't actually go on this road trip to buy records, but of course when we're out and about, we're always on the hunt, aren't we, us record fiends? But before we get into that, I'd just like to thank you for subscribing to this channel, for liking this video in particular, ringing the bell to get notified when we post more videos in the future, and sharing a comment or in the comments section below. I do my best to reply to all of the comments, and I would love to hear what you have to say about this video and anything you'd like to share about any of the road trips you've been on, record buying or otherwise. Okay, so this is a more casual affair. So I'm gonna go ahead and crack this beer right here. I'm gonna be drinking this Beechwood IPA. This is the Lupulin Lounge. Cool can design. Beechwood is such a great brewery, and they do a really great job with their can design as well. This is one of the mini beers we sell at the Permanent Records Roadhouse. So cheers, y'all. I hope you will sit back, relax, and enjoy this video with me. Cheers, friends. First sip. Nothing like that first sip feeling, right? Okay, so I recently went with my girlfriend Tara to Ohio. Her family has this timeshare kind of lake house in Port Clinton, Ohio, which is just a little west of Cleveland. And she's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania originally. So every year or every other year, her family gets a week at this beautiful lake house. I'll share videos. This is going to be a tough one to edit because I'm going to be throwing a lot of videos and extraneous stuff your way, but I'm going to try to motor right through. So anyway, that's why we're in Ohio. There's never a bad reason to go to Ohio. It's a beautiful state. There's a lot of great records there, a lot of great record stores. It's just beautiful country, and we went this summer back in, I think it was June when we were there. Wow, that's crazy. Anyway, maybe it was July. I don't remember. It does not matter for the purposes of this video, does it? But either way, so we left LA and flew into Cleveland. Of course, that's where the big airport is, for this Ohio, Pennsylvania road trip. We flew into Cleveland, and our first stop once we got out of the airport was to go visit our good pal Charles over at My Mind's Records. Probably the best record store in Cleveland. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. There are other great record stores in Cleveland as well, but we didn't have much time in the city, so we stopped in to visit Charles, hung with him for a bit, exchanged stories. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He's had a record store for a very, very long time. He knows a lot about a lot of different kinds of music, and he has great taste. Really, really cool store. He bought a bunch of Brown Acid records from me and some of the other reissues that we've put out on Permanent, Stonewall, Zipper, Raven probably, and a bunch of the stuff that I've A&R'd on Riding Easy as well. So if you like the stuff that I talk about as far as the releases that I've worked on for reissue, if you live in Cleveland, can find them at My Mind's Eye. Thank you, Charles. Always a pleasure, my friend. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to show from my trip to My Mind's Eye. I did not pick anything up there, surprisingly. He's got amazing records, but Charles and I also have very similar tastes. So getting some of the rare hard rock and heavy psych stuff from Charles, unless he already has it and I'm getting a duplicate, is kind of impossible. So anyway, after that, we drove to Port Clinton, Ohio, which is where the lake house is. Beautiful, beautiful part of the country. And it was late, so I don't even think had a chance to have dinner, but we did stop at a local dive called Beer 30s, which was like a pretty good time for sure. It's always funny to walk into these local dives. You never know what to expect, but it was cool because they had kind of touchscreen, digital jukebox kind of thing, so we were able to kind of curate some music for ourselves in this very foreign setting. I'm from the Midwest, so this is not strange to me at all. And we technically have a dive bar here in LA in the Permanent Records Roadhouse, but it's a different scene when you walk into a small town dive bar. I think you know what I mean. There were kegs being, the urinals in the bathroom were made of old beer kegs. Just a really charming, fun place. Really unassuming, salt of the earth kind of people and stuff. It was really nice. The bartender was really cool. So the next morning, we had breakfast at the A La Carte Cafe in downtown Port Clinton. Also, kind of a like kind of scenario when the two of us walked in there. You know, guys with long hair walking in a small town, you know, greasy spoon diners usually don't get the most friendly reaction. But, you know, after we kind of got comfortable in there, everybody stopped, you know, craning their necks. What do they call that? I can't remember. But anyway, they stopped looking at us strangely. We were able to enjoy our breakfast and get on our merry way. I took a few pictures of downtown Port Clinton that I'll try to share here as well. And then afterwards, we gathered our rations from all of the places that have the things that you need for a lake house vacation. And we headed back to Little Pittsburgh. So as you turn off the main road onto the dirt road that leads you down to the lake house, which is right on the lake, there's this quaint little sign that says "Welcome to Little Pittsburgh" on it, and that is because this particular lane and the houses that are on them were built by people from Pittsburgh as vacation getaways. So, and they're still, I think, primarily owned by the families who built them back in the day, which is pretty cool. So this setting is beautiful. The lake house is rustic, but it's been in Tara's family for generations. There's a long private dock with a sandy beach. The water was 78 degrees, perfect weather the whole trip. And we just chilled by the lake the majority of the time that we were there. No reason to leave, you know, why would you when you got margaritas and, you know, local craft brew and good food, and Tara's a great cook, thankfully. So, it was a really, really lovely time by the lake. We literally just chilled, listened to music, you know, played high-lie, in the water and just kind of enjoyed ourselves and tried to decompress. We both work a whole lot, so it's nice to get a true mostly unplugged getaway. And we did take a minor, we did step away from the lake house occasionally when we went for little hikes around the island, quote unquote. We walked from one side of the peninsula to the other. It was really cool. And we would occasionally go to the bar restaurant at the end of the lane where the lake house is on. This place called the Orchard. You've probably been to a place like this. They brew their own beer there and they make delicious cocktails at the bar. And it's called the Orchard because it's an actual orchard. They have apples and grapevines and beehives and chickens, you know, just really fun, like kind of rural orchard, roadside bar restaurant kind of joint. The sunrises were stunning, as were the sunsets, especially on the last morning. Check this out. Amazing. And then after a few days at the lake house, we went back to Cleveland to meet up with the member of a band that I cannot talk about just yet. But this is a big deal project that I'm going to be working on with Writing Easy Records, and I'll be able to share that information at some point in the future, just not yet. So, but we were able to ink a deal with this particular band, and a reissue is in the works, and it's a really, really exciting one. From there, we went to the Mecca, Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown is had an incredibly rich hard rock scene back in the late 60s and in the 70s, and so many bands from Youngstown have been included on the Brown Acid compilation series that I curate. It's just like a crazy high per capita ratio of bands from Youngstown on Brown Acid. It's weirdly high, and I sound weirdly high right now too, but seriously, Youngstown is the mecca for that type of music in that time period. They had, like I said, an incredibly rich scene, and there were so many bands that that came from there, primarily because of the recording studio Peppermint, which is one of the stops we made while we were in Youngstown. But I'll get to that in a minute. So from, I also made a Spotify playlist called Brown Acid Across Ohio that we played on this road trip. So feel free to check that out. It's created by Permanent Records, and it has the Ohio State flag on in the image. So specifically from Youngstown, you got Max, Travis, you got this band. Max and Travis are two bands from are on Brown Acid. You got this band, Blue Ash. Blue Ash is a hard rock band that kind of dabbles in the power pop world. If you like Badfinger and Big Star and you're not already familiar with Blue Ash, you got to at least check out their first album, No More, No Less. It's a major label release on Mercury Records, but it's really, really stunning stuff. And you don't see it very often either. Also from Youngstown, Ohio is this band, Left End. Left End released this album on a major label, and they also had some self-released singles. And we'll come back to Left End here shortly. I did not pick these records up on this road trip. I already had them. You got Pooba, Jim Gustafson, also in a band called Biggie Rat from Youngstown, Ohio. And last but certainly not least is the Morley Gray. The Only Truth is an exceptional late 60s, maybe early 70s? No, 1969 to 72 is when this material comes from. This is a reissue. But anyway, this is an exceptionally rare psych record. And this band, also from Youngstown, Ohio. For it being a pretty small town, you can see it was very, very rich with this hard rock sound, I should say. So Starshine Records is based out of Youngstown, Ohio, or was, I should say. And that was also in addition to Peppermint Studios. So as you can see, I'm really excited about Youngstown, Ohio. I was really excited to go there. I've been close to Youngstown so many times by going to Pittsburgh so regularly, but I'd never actually made the journey to Youngstown until now. So the first stop in Youngstown was to Underdog Records, and I wish I had gotten out the Todd 45. Maybe I'll pop a picture up here. The Todd is another band on Brown Acid. I think we had them on the first trip of Brown Acid, actually. And the Todd features a gentleman named Sonny. Sonny owns a record store in Youngstown called Underdog Records. And Underdog Records has been there for a very long time. Sonny is a very cool guy, and we visited with Sonny and met up with Nick Nicholas, not a Youngstown guy, but Akron, Ohio guy who owned the record label Clone Records. That Beechwood made me burp a little bit. Clone Records is not a topic for this video, but you should check out Clone Records anyway, because that is a concern that you should get familiar with. Anyway, and then from there, after a good time with Nick Nicholas from the Bizarros and Clone Records and Sonny from the Todd, we moved on to Peppermint Studios and met up with Gary Ramey, one of the engineers who's been there since the beginning in the early 70s, and Anthony LaMarca. Anthony is a Youngstown guy, but he plays in a band called The War on Drugs, who many of you are probably familiar with. Not only did we meet up with those guys from the studio, where a whole bunch of amazing recordings were made from many, many decades, including a bunch of hard rock and heavy psych stuff, aforementioned bands included. This studio is still going strong, and they still have all the original gear, the mixing board, the tape machines, everything down to the shag carpeting up on the walls of the recording studio. And we met there not only with Anthony and Gary Ramey, but with Gary Del Vecchio. Hopefully I have the Gary Del Vecchio. Of course I did not get the Gary Del Vecchio record. I'll show it here. Gary Del Vecchio is a Youngstown guy, and he recorded at Peppermint as a youngster, in high school, in fact. He would essentially save up his allowance and his milk money, and he would go into Peppermint and record these songs that he had written as a high school kid. Unbelievable story. And it was so cool to see him and Gary reunited in that studio together. Side note, I have worked with Gary Ramey on licensing a track of his by his band Max called Buzzin', and then an LP of unreleased material, mostly unreleased material with the same name on Riding Easy Records. So we were hanging with those guys, and I got notes here because I'm trying to remember all of the details of this trip, and it was so long ago. So yeah, we were hanging with those guys, and from there we got a bunch of pictures, we shared stories. Anthony and Gary gifted me a couple of the releases that they've done. So not only are they a recording studio, they're now a record label who has released 3 LPs. The Left End album, this is a bunch of unreleased, or I'm sorry, not unreleased, but privately released recordings, the stuff that's not on the LP, the major label LP that I showed earlier. Amazing stuff. That's the stuff I was trying to license, but Left End told me to take a hike. It helps to have a personal relationship with some of these guys, obviously. They also did this compilation called Rat Race of things that were recorded, and you can see on the cover there, that's shag carpeting and the colorful elements of Peppermint recording studio from back in the day. And then also Peppermint found a tape. This LP is comprised of material found on an unreleased tape. I believe this is from 1971. Again, a Youngstown band called Bull Run. This is really fantastic, hard and heavy rock and roll. So Anthony and Gary still actively recording in the studio and archiving some of the tapes that are in the studio and doing a great job. Such sweet guys. It was really wonderful to meet them. Thank them for this t-shirt that they hooked me up with. I'm sure you can get one of these on their website. Those aforementioned LPs. They didn't have the LP, unfortunately, of the glass harp, but I got the CD and the cassette version, and they hooked me up with a couple stickers as well. Super, super cool. What a trip. And to me, again, going to Youngstown was like going to Mecca. It was an unbelievable trip. And I'm not even finished with the story of being in Youngstown. But I'm going to take a short break, and I'll be right back with you.